Hey man, welcome back to Man Time. Today's episode, we're going to talk about another way that you can cut a straight cut across an I-beam. These are all going to be my uprights for the internal mezzanine for the barn dominium, and I need to make sure they are perfect and all those lines line up. It just makes my life easier, right? I could just kind of cut it using some of the methods that I've shown in the past, where you measure with a tape measure and then you affix a straight edge or a rest on there where you can cut a straight cut, but I want to make sure I can get a straight cut all the way through that I-beam every single time. Let's see if we can figure it out today. Welcome to Man Time. Alright, so just a couple of things to start off here. Before you even go to make a cut, you want to measure, remeasure, recalculate, and do that several times over. I've done that a couple times now with the length of these, and you need to be planning ahead for what you want to do, right? I want to have the top of all of the beams come up to where a 10-foot wall is going to stand up. So, first thing I did was go and price and spec out lumber for what's going to be the internal, walls in the house. Now, all of these are not going to be load bearing, so it's going to be a completely open floor plan where I can move and change wall locations and all that. But I did 2x8 C-purling, right? That's going to be every 2 foot running laterally across through the ceiling. I want to be able to stand up a wall and then mount it, to the floor and then to those C-purling. Right, so what's a 10-foot wall? The boards I spec'd out are 2x4x10 fir, and they're exactly 10 feet. Right, so I can't make these exactly 10 feet. Why is that? Well, you've got a sill plate on the bottom, or a 2x4 on the bottom, and a 2x4 on the top, making that a wall that you can then stand up. Right, so there's an additional 3 inches. Well, in the standing up process, your dimension is going to be that hypotenuse triangle, which is going to be corner to corner of that 2x4 wall standing up, right? It's going to be on end and on end and trying to stand it up through there. So I measured that. That's 3/4 of an inch, right? So I'm at 123.75. That's where I want the very tops of all of the steel structure to sit, and then have my C-purlin on top of that, and then it'll be within a 1/4 inch there, or it's going to be right there at 103.75. And then what I can do is put like a 3/4 inch or 1/2 inch board, just rip some plywood and then stick that on top of the wall, to really get it secured in there. And then of course nail it down into the concrete using one of those Hilti powdered guns, whatever, that nails, through that 2x4. But I want these obviously to be perfectly straight up and down and perfectly all the same height, and it's really hard to do using a tape measure and individually, measuring on all sides of the W beam, right? I'm going to have to measure here, measure here, measure here, because there's no square that I can lay through that I-beam and get a straight line all the way across that I-beam. And then also at the same time, I'm going to have to then backspace off the kerf and the distance from where it's going to rest to where it's going to cut with that kerf included, right? And I know that's a 1/2 inch right now from all the cutting that I've done. So in thinking about how do I make a square that lays all through the I-beam, what do you think I came up with? What would you have come up with? And is there a method you use to make a straight cut on an I-beam? I'm going to get you in here and show you what I made. Let's check it out. Okay, so the problem we're trying to fix is how to cut this straight across, all the way across, and know that you've got a singular flat surface then, where you're not having it off one way or the other, or angled one way or the other, and having a reference where you can just trace along there. And what I came up with was this right here. So that is going to fit over, and the only thing that really matters is that it is a flat piece of steel. And then what I'm going to come in and do is have a couple of these 90s, right, affixed securely to both this piece and the I-beam, and then that's going to hold it again exactly 90 degrees. Now the offset that we could possibly run into is back and forth this way. I think I'm going to use two of these squares, one on either side of it, and then also make sure to have some measurements marked on either side here where I can have a reference to make sure that this side is the same distance as this side. The other problem we're going to run into, and why I've got version 1 here and version 2 here, is the torch, right? We've got to be referencing off the same part of the torch. You can see on the torch here, normally I reference on something down here. That's a 1/2 inch to the outside of the kerf to give me a perfect dimension if I come off of my line 1/2 inch and reference there. Now we're going to be referencing up here. And the problem with version 1 is the references were different. I was referencing off somewhere in here on the sides, and then on the top here I was referencing off the top of the torch, or closer to the base of the torch, I guess you could say, which would have then put the two dimensions just slightly off from one another. So in version 2 here, now we're referencing again this part of the torch on this side and the same part of the torch on this side. So I offset it 2 inches out on either side here, and then of course just enough to get those saddles to clear and have it go, you know, all the way to the bottom there. So that is looking pretty darn good. I should be able to start making some measurements and making some cuts. Alright, so after all of the deliberation, it comes down to making the mark and making the cut. If I don't get this right the first time, it is going to be a very, very expensive piece of wasted steel, right? So I am 105 is the final determination I've come up with, and you want to make sure to do that math forwards and backwards. By what I mean is 123.75 minus the 6 inch minus the 12 inch minus the 3/8 top and bottom, so 3/8 times 2 is 3/4. We finally come up with 105 is the number, and then work that backwards. 105 plus 3/4 plus 6 plus 12, does that equal the 123.75? And it does. So we're good to go. Next thing is the offset, right? I'm going to have this on here, and it is going to be offset from the 105 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to make another mark at 3/4 and another mark at 3/4, 105 3/4, 105 3/4. And that didn't work out very well. So I've got a scribe. Let's see if that scribe works a little bit better. Okay, so there's basically 4 ways to mark your steel here. This is, let's see here, this is going to be Made in USA, General Scribe, right? So we can make a very precision mark with that, but that isn't showing up very well. The other way to do it again is with the, it's not quite chalk, I don't remember exactly what they call it, but it is a fairly good way to do it. So, got that marked out, 105 3/4. I'm going to flip this thing over, get 105 in yellow, and then my offset in a different color, so I can kind of quick reference. And then what I'm going to do when I get this set up on there is just do a check, you know, to make sure that we're perfectly lined up here. Alright, so let's get a good look at what I'm doing here. Did you do the math in your head? Is 105 plus 6 plus 12 plus 3/4 123 3/4? I hope so. Okay, so we've got our 105. Then we want to come back an additional 3/4 again for that offset. That's going to be the distance from the edge of the torch body to where I want the kerf to land. And one thing you can do, I guess, with the scribe is make this mark a little more precise, like down in there, down in there, so you can really get on the mark you want to make. But on the metal, it's not showing up real well. All right, 105 and then 105 3/4. Yeah, I don't know about you, but this is the stuff I live for. Watching YouTube is, you know, the things that are going to help me in my life to do it right the first time. Yeah, that's a little easier said than done, getting it perfectly aligned. A little bit of wiggle room there. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go for double and do one here and one here. There we go. Yeah, it looks like I'm gonna have a lot better success trying to get that perfectly square. And then I'll just take a little hammer and tap them up to where they're perfectly aligned on either side with those marks. Torch, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, put the torch up against this steady rest and run it through where it's going to be cutting. I'm going to cut through the side here, through this other side, and then across the back. Like that. Okay, this is it. This is for all the marbles. Did we get our measurements correct? Did we line up that plate using those magnets correctly? Did we measure and backspace off correctly? This is going to be a very expensive cut if if we didn't, right? Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Whew. Hope and a prayer here. Hope and a prayer. I triple checked my measurements. I don't know that I can get any better at this point. Quadruple check. Okay, I'm where I need to be. I'm making the cuts. One of the things I definitely noticed is your torch angle makes quite a bit of difference here. So just want to make sure that it's okay, and finally, the center cut here. Clean the slag out of the way, making sure not to bump what we've got going on here. Okay, open and prayer time. looks like I'm just slightly off right here where I twisted. Okay, we're separated. Let's see how close we got here. Man, that is stressful. Okay, this is still hot. I don't want to burn myself. That would be bad. Did we get 105 inches? I haven't checked it yet. We are going to find out together whether or not it's 105 or not. Oh my goodness, look at that, right on 105. I don't know that I could be any more perfect. I'm within a 1/16 of an inch. I'm just over a 1/16 of an inch. See if I can line this up on this side. Yeah, 1/16 of an inch, straight all the way across. Again, we are 105 on the sides, 105 on the bottom. Move the tape back over to the other side. And yeah, 105 plus maybe a 1/16. Oh boy, that could have been a very expensive mistake. I'm going to be doing that and stressing out, cutting all of these. But a 1/16 of an inch, yeah, that's what I wanted, plus or minus a 1/16. That gives me an 1/8 of an inch total tolerance. One thing I did want to show you, when you're measuring your offset, it is going to matter, you know, which side of the metal is going to be your actual piece, right? So I made this cut here, and you could see it kind of started to walk a little bit as I was trying to figure out where to hold this thing. I started off here, and then I moved it back. So my reference is this flat surface here. I want to make sure that is a flat surface, and when that happens, that's where this is cutting right there. But you want to offset, you know, on this particular cut, this piece was the keeper piece, right? So my offset was based on this side of the kerf. Now, if I'm keeping this piece, then I want to offset based on this side of the kerf. So on this side here, I am a 1/2 and a 1/16. Is that right? 1/4, 1/8, 1/16, yeah. So I am a 1/2 plus a 1/16, and then I am a 1/2 plus 3/16, or a 1/16 off of 3/4 if I measure from this side here. Here's 3/4, 3/4 minus a 1/16. You can see the kerf makes up an 1/8 of an inch, and on this side of it, I'm a 1/2 plus a 1/16. So depending on which side you're keeping is what side you want to offset. Or that distance of offset is going to change based on whether you're keeping this piece or keeping this piece. All right, man, there is my second piece, and again, I am right at 105 and pretty clean all across there. I got a little screwed up right down here when I started off. Again, coming in at an angle and working my way into the cut. But other than that, it is all lined up across there at 105. Yeah, right there, 105. Again, within a 1/16 of an inch, that 1/8 inch kerf, and I think this is going to be good. Keep that in mind though when you're offsetting, you know, how much to offset it depending on which side you're going to be keeping, right? So this side I offset more, just a 1/16 under 3/4. If I were to be keeping this side, I would offset it so it is 1/2 inch plus a 1/16, and then in between those two is going to be your 1/8 inch kerf. But hopefully this was helpful for you. If you have any different suggestions of how to cut straight 90s at the end of your I-beam or W-beam in this case, make sure to put those down in the comments if there's a different method you use. I'm sure it's going to be helpful for anybody, you know, finding this video on YouTube. So if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe, hit that thumbs up button, and get out there, have you some man time too.